Hello, we're still on Chapter 7. We're beginning Section 2. Last time we talked about history of information processing, and this time we're going to shift focus into study skills and how organization relates to study skills and begin talking about memory. Last time we were talking how information processing lost a lot of steam. This was in the late 70s. Now, areas of research persisted. One of the big areas was study skills. There was a lot of interest in discovering and describing effective and efficient study practices. What we know about study skills is that it involves two principles: the organization of materials and the memorization of materials. I want to focus first on different organizational systems. Much of the research on study skills was done by this man, Walter Pock. He was the director of Cornell's Reading and Study Center and quite the prolific author. His book, How to Study in College, is considered the premier guide for, how to study in college. Among other things, he is credited with the development of the Cornell note-taking method, which has the advantage of not only organizing your notes, but working as a memory aid for the material. Now you can see different templates for Cornell notes, ranging from pretty simple to very involved. A learner should be able to adapt the form to fit the style of the class lectures and the other material. How does it work? Well, briefly, we put questions or keywords in that first smaller column, our notes in the second larger column, and ideally we have a summary section that helps us coalesce the information into a meaningful whole. Now look at this. You can see when you're studying, you can cover up your notes and see if you can answer your questions. You do have a supplemental handout on the how-tos of this note-taking system, and there is a ton of information, forms, and videos online. Now, another organizational system is the Harvard Linear Method. This is an older method from, I think, the 60s. I don't find it so useful for in-class note-taking, but it's very useful for organizing information from a book or your notes. I suspect all of you are familiar with mind mapping. Here you have a central idea, and then ideas sprout off the sides with more and more details added as they come to you. Again, not so useful for taking in-class notes, but this can be very useful to help you organize ideas, whether it's conceptual information, as I give you at the beginning of some of our chapters, or, and I find it especially useful here, when you're brainstorming for a lengthy paper. If you like mind mapping, you may want to look into Inspiration. It's a computer-generated mind map program. It's not particularly pricey, and they offer student discounts. Now, another method is writing on slides. This is designed for in-class note-taking. It's generally painless, but it has a major disadvantage if all you do is take notes on your slides. One of the major purposes of note-taking is that it helps you understand information. To understand, you have to be able to condense and summarize the lecture. The best way to overcome this disadvantage is to preview the PowerPoints before the lecture, noting any questions or comments you may have on the PowerPoints or on a separate sheet. Now, another method for taking and organizing notes is the visual note-taking method, also known as sketch note-taking. Here you're compressing words and ideas into a picture. It's known to be especially good when you have to remember people, dates, or any weird technical terminology. Obviously, this is great for those of you who are visual learners. I suspect it would also appeal to those of you who are into bullet journaling. I like using this method not as a primary, but as a supplement to my other notes. Now, not related to note-taking, it's simply an organization system for writing a paragraph, is this one. It makes an analogy between the parts of a paragraph and the parts of a hamburger. I've seen this used with elementary children who are learning about writing. Now, by no means has this been an exhaustive list of organizational techniques and tools. We're going to be talking about some others later in the chapter. One I want to leave you with is Zotero. This is a free open source citation and reference tool that helps you collect, organize, and store research materials. It has a wide range of uses, and there are a myriad of videos online to help you learn the basics and some of the more esoteric things you can do with this program. I think the key thing with any note-taking or organizational system is that it should be meaningful and easy for you to use, and it should fit the learning situation. Having a number of techniques at your fingertips allows you to make an intelligent and informed choice, and that is what will make you an effective and efficient learner. Now, earlier I had mentioned that the foundations of study skills were organization and memory. We've just been talking about a few organization techniques. Now we're going to drift into memory. This is Santrock's definition of memory. Essentially, it's the ability to retain information. Now, I was taught that we have two types of memory. Maybe you were too. This is correct, but it turned out not to be the two types that I was taught. Let's find out more about memory, and we'll learn about the two types. Now, according to information processing theory, memory has three processes: encoding, which is getting the information into our brain; storage, we'll be finding out how much information can be altered in our memories later on; and we have retrieval, which is recall. Now to the two types of memory. I was taught short-term and long-term. If you were taught that, I need you to empty your cup. This information I'm about to present is new and different. According to our best research, we have declarative memory, also known as explicit memory. This is our memory for things, for facts, for names, anything we can declare or say. We also have procedural memory. It's known as implicit memory, sometimes muscle memory. This is our memory for physical actions, for complex behavioral chains. We know something is likely a procedural memory if you have to show someone what to do rather than just tell them about it. We're going to focus first on declarative memory. Much of what we know comes from this man, Henry Molaison. Now, Henry was not a scientist, a psychologist, or any kind of a researcher. He was born in 1926. At age 7, he developed a seizure disorder when he fell from his bike. Some have suggested that the fall happened when he had the seizure. The seizures increased in number, severity, and duration. By age 27, Henry was unable to continue working, both because of the seizure activity and the high doses of anticonvulsant medication. So, in 1953, he was referred to a neurosurgeon who did a bilateral medial temporal lobectomy and surgically resected the anterior two-thirds of his hippocampi, his parahippocampal cortices, his entorhinal cortices, piriform cortices, and the amygdala in the attempt to cure his epilepsy. What that means is the surgeon took out the lowest sections of the cerebrum from Henry, including a structure that we didn't know at the time exactly what it did, the hippocampus. Now, the surgery was partially successful in that Henry's seizures were lessened considerably. However, he developed what is known as severe anterograde amnesia. That's the loss of the ability to create new memories. He also lost memories about 3 years prior to the surgery. He never regained them. He was never able to engage in any new declarative learning. He did exhibit some functional working memory and procedural memory. Now, just for your information, retrograde amnesia is the condition where there's an event and memories created prior to the event are lost, but new memories can still be created. Now, we learned a lot from Henry, who willed his brain to science. You can go to the internet and find the atlas of his brain, which has been preserved. This is a drawing of what he had removed. He had the bulk of his hippocampus removed, and our research with him allowed us to begin to understand the role of the hippocampus in declarative memory. The hippocampus is a double horseshoe-shaped structure that's based in the middle part of the brain and then reaches up into the temporal lobe. The capacity to develop long-term declarative memories resides in this part of the brain. This is a line drawing of the hippocampus. You can see the two horseshoe shapes. Just again for your information, this isn't connected in infants up until about 4 to 7 months or so. It's about the same time that infants begin to develop object permanence. And we also begin to lose connections between the hippocampus and the temporal lobe as we age. So we have increasing difficulties with new learning and recall, especially word finding. This is the end of our second section on Chapter 7.